If I've learned anything through this process, it's that they don't know this better than us. Nobody does. We know this space better than anyone, and all we need to do is just have the audacity to get after it. And that's, I think, why we've had some success so far.
So, Phonz, we'll start with you here. So, when you think about the marketplace and the opportunity for Spill, when you first had the idea, like talk to me about like what was the opening that you saw for this lane?
Yeah, I think the insight was really deeper and trying to look deeper at social media holistically from the start. Um, I've been working in social media as a marketing professional, entertainment brands for years, and when we look at the grand diasporic nature of conversation online, it's almost always driven by us, right? The trends, the culture, the new lexicon, everything like that. It comes from Black communities, queer communities, other marginalized groups. And so we were really looking at the problem set that's facing our community first and saying, who's building for us? No one. Or, from a macro standpoint, nothing that we've really seen that really accounts for the amount of impact that we have at the level that it should be, right? And so that's really the opportunity that we saw coming into the fall of last year when, as some may know, I was working at a company that has recently gone through a rebrand that I will not name. And we were looking at, obviously a lot of people were like, okay, what's next after this? And we had no interest in trying to recreate something that we knew had some flaws in it, right? That platform has had challenges way before, Elon and those folks came in. And we really wanted to look at this, the whole ecosystem and really say, hey, let's push the medium forward. And let's start by centering Black folks, queer folks, other marginalized groups from the beginning, which never happens, and really allow us to sort of set the tone, the vibe, and really solve for our key problem sets, which really boil down to three things. One is safety, two is credit, and third is getting rewarded for the contributions that we make to the online culture, right? That's really the core problem sets that we set out to solve, and that's the opportunity that we saw last fall that we, that really inspired what Spill is now.
Yeah, when you just mentioned the word, I'd like you to go in on. You say you saw some challenges inside that platform for particularly for our communities. Can you talk a little bit about Black people have brought so much to social media. We over index on all social media platforms. What challenges exist historically in social media, which is 20 years old, maybe 15 years old social media? Like what challenges exist that when we bring so much value, we still don't get recognized for that? It's institutional. It's got to be institutional at this point.
Well, let's be honest, it's a reflection of how our culture has been exploited, for generations across a variety of mediums that go beyond social, right? We've seen this in music, we've seen this in, TV, and of course, how it's being expressed in the tech space. This is what happens when you don't have people who are driving the most culture, building the platforms at the same time. And, I know Kenya can, speak to this personally as well, but let's just talk about Black women, right? Black women over-index, as you mentioned, on heavy social media usage, not just usage, heavy, 3+ hours per day. No identity group is using social more. And then two, on media consumption. Nobody's watching more TV, listening to more music, talking about it, creating community around it, deciding, who's going to be next, right? So those are just facts that we can, center on. Yet most businesses only are thinking about this once or twice a year. It's like, hey, February is coming up. What are we going to do? We're going to throw a party and then, forget about it for the rest of the year. And so that's been an issue, not just at, the platform formerly known as Twitter, but many social platforms. When you looked at YouTube, when you looked at, today to TikTok, right? We've seen, Black creators have to go on strike, literally, just to, create, a news cycle around how they're not being credited properly. So this has been going on for a while, and it's the type of problem that only gets solved when we as a community decide to, just roll up our sleeves and be like, it's us. And if I learned anything, I'll throw this this nugget out there. If I've learned anything through this process, it's that they don't know this better than us. Nobody does. We know this space better than anyone, and all we need to do is just have the audacity to get after it. And that's, I think, why we've had some success so far.
100%. And Kenya, I'd love you to chime in on this because Phonz talked about a couple of things like we create culture on these things, and we get a chance to amplify and distribute our culture on these things. If you talk about just Black culture, which I agree with people like Tristan Walker, like Black culture runs all global culture. We're talking about food or dance or music or sports, like we drive that. And even, LGBTQ culture, if you think about camp, fashion in that way, we set the trends. And in so many ways, we're just starting to have this conversation about how creators get recognized by these platforms. Are they being either compensated or recognized? Do people steal, their dance moves and then credit them as their own? And then the platforms amplify the people who don't look like us when there was somebody who looked like us that created it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, really appreciate that question. One of the things that we're seeking to prove as well with Spill is that cultural and technical fluency can coexist, right? We believe that we can be culturally competent and know who the source of these trends are, acknowledge them, make sure they receive the attribution, and also communicate to our partners who are at the table to make sure that they're aware of who these people are, and do so in a way that creates a much healthier ecosystem for the creator economy, which we know, as Goldman Sachs has stated, is set to double over the next 5 years. Right now, we're at about $280 million. It's about to double, $280 billion. It's about to double in that over the next couple of years. And so, we're really seeking to make sure that these folks feel safe to create and bring their best heat to Spill. And that the partners that are here also feel really excited about knowing that they're coming to a place that houses the source of the best of what makes culture brings culture forward.
Kenya, I'd like to stay on you on this because there's a lot of conversation around creators being appropriately compensated for what they bring to platforms, and so there's a lot of formulas, a lot of math that goes into that. How does Spill think about hey, X percent or whatever. I'm not to put words in your mouth, but this is how we dictate based on X number of impressions, how we work with you as the creator.
Sure. I mean, this is a equation that folks have been trying to crack for a long time, and we are trying to be as innovative and intentional as possible about coming up with what that looks like. The beautiful part about that is we've got everybody at the table to be able to have this conversation, and it's our table that we're setting. We're looking forward to continuing to have these conversations with folks and to listen to the creators who know just as well as everybody else, right? What these things are worth, and we want to make sure that they're present to be able to communicate that value on their own behalf. So far often in whatever industry we see it in, people are having conversations about creators, having conversations about tastemakers without including them at the table to speak for themselves. One of my favorite things about what we're doing at Spill is the communities that we're building. We have a call and response relationship with these creators. Creators are the new athletes. I'm excited. I'm working on some stuff this week. I'm here in the Vineyard. I'm going to be talking about the creator economy. And one of the sayings that we're saying is, creators are the new athletes. And so we're bringing them to the table to be able to have these conversations and communicate their value with these stakeholders who are interested in accessing, again, the best of what they bring to the social space. And we're looking forward to being able to advance these conversations and have some meaningful outcomes that come from these conversations around the value of the cultural capital that is generated with what we put in the social space.
Phonz, I don't remember who I was talking to, but there was a statement somebody made that made a lot of sense to me. And they said, one of the greatest things Steve Jobs did was create the App Store. But one of the worst things about the App Store is it gave people the idea that everything should be free. And so I wonder, and obviously with a social media app, you need distribution. So free makes sense. But how did you think about, we've got to get hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people into this thing, but we still have to rethink the business model. How do you think about these things?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of discussion about the pros and cons of advertising, right? And having been a marketer for many years, I can see both sides of the argument. So, from a business standpoint, let's be clear: the just when we talk about brands trying to reach Black, queer, other marginalized audiences in the United States alone, it's a $30 billion a year business. Okay, and it's growing. It's 5 to 10% year on year. So I think that's an incredible, revenue stream that we're not going to ignore. But we're not exclusively looking at that either, because there are people who may want an ad-free experience, or more importantly, pro tools, right? Speaking to the creators specifically that Kenya was talking about, we're actually developing a suite of tools that's going to make it easier for creators. And as a social media manager by trade, right, I want this to be less stress. We don't want it to be yet another thing you got to worry about, but it's like, oh, it's easier to publish. I get my analytics. I can, potentially have access to data that I don't get from other platforms, generate email lists and things of that nature, so that the creators can have a deeper relationship with their audience. And those are tools that I think make sense when you're talking about, not a crazy fee, but like a subscription model, because we're giving you something extra, that you probably can't get anywhere else. So we're looking at that. And I think we're also interested in other services as well. I won't give the whole playbook away, but one of the things that one of my favorite spills I saw recently was somebody spilled, "What's your favorite dating app?" And someone quoted it saying "Spill," and and so that might give you a little wink and a nod to some of the ways we think we can, just provide additional services to our community, who is generally being underserved, holistically in this frame. There's a whole host of things that we're looking at that we think make sense as premium products versus just, ad revenue models.
There was an article that came out about you guys. It was in Fast Company, but the subtitle is what I wanted to pick up, and it said "Black people made Twitter into a business worth $44 billion." That was the subtitle of the article. And but you had a spill where you actually pushed back against the narrative that it's food, like it's for us, by us. But you said, like, look, it's by us, but we're for people who champion us. I don't want to put, again, not to put words in your mouth. That was a paraphrase. Is it okay to amplify the food, the for us, but also by us?
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's be clear. It's by us, 100%. We're coming from the culture, and it is for us too. And I want to make sure that that doesn't get confused. We are building with Black communities, queer communities in mind, like the problem sets that are specifically acute to us. We want you to be able to come to a platform where, you don't have to code switch. You can scroll past a bunch of amazing content without having to worry about racists popping in in your comments, right? Or dealing with those types of trolls. We want you again to be credited, celebrated, and rewarded, for the contributions that you make to the platform. So I want to make that abundantly clear. It definitely is for us, but I think the idea that, there's other communities, especially marginalized groups, right? And one of my experiences at Twitter, I was very active when the Asian hate, Stop Asian Hate movement really started rising post COVID, right? Where we saw some of the most heinous actions against this community, and it was really, really nasty online. And when we think about the technology we're building, the large language model AI, that is really tuned to be like a culturally literate content moderation, but it can understand the context of not just what's being said, but who's saying it. You're on the platform. When you join the platform, many people share their ethnic backgrounds, and that helps us build a safer environment because we know who's saying what. We should be able to apply that to any communities that aren't feeling safe, the able community, other things like that. And I think that that's a really important use case for us long term, that everybody should understand. But that doesn't in any way take away from our mission as a platform and our identity as a platform and our brand, which is we're going to be at Afro Tech, we're going to be at Afro Future, we're going to be at Essence, like this is very much us, but we can also, I think this is a question I've asked and we've talked about as a team a lot is, okay, when we build something, we as in Black folks, we as in queer folks, the groups that have historically been marginalized, especially in tech, can we build it in a way that doesn't replicate the harms of other platforms prior to us? And is that something that other people can benefit from, and therefore our creators can benefit from those audiences too, right? Like we have to think expansively. And then I'd say the last thing, and I can, sorry, I'm a preacher's son, so I can go on and on. You got to cut me off here, but no, but I think when you think about outside the United States, right? Black folks are diasporic, right? The Black experience is really, really varied. There's no one monolithic way, to sort of to be Black, like whether it's in South Africa or in Brazil or, in Europe. And that's a varied experience that we also really want to be home to and welcoming to, because that's something that's needed. And I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is really, bringing community back to social, in all the best ways, where it's like, oh, I get to meet people that are like dope and interesting. And, Will Lucas is on here and I had a little exchange with him. And, oh, we're at the Afro Tech. I found out about the Afro Tech happy hour in Atlanta, through Spill, and we can go do that. Like, we want to build a global diasporic community, and it behooves us to be open-minded and welcoming and have big tent thinking, and we need to trust that that's not going to disrupt our mission at all. Trust me when I say that our mission will never change.
There are on almost every social media app a play for creators to be on those platforms. When you think about Twitter is doing it, well, X is doing it now. Facebook is making plays. Instagram, subset of Facebook, is making plays. Other new entrants like entrants like Fanbase are making plays for creators. When you are introduced to creators, what is the selling point you say you need to be on Spill? What is the biggest selling point you have that says, okay, this works most of the time versus the other arguments or cases we can present?
This ain't no flex here. I'm just gonna call it like it is. We have been incredibly blessed. We have a team that has roots in this work for a long time, and so as we have put ourselves out there, and been public about who is on our team, we have found one, that the receipts don't lie. Right, Phonz has been doing this work. Davaris has been doing this work. I've been doing this work. Our engineers, we've been doing this work. So we're grateful that Spill is really the nexus of a lot of our lifelong bodies of work, for one. Two, we're seeking, like Phonz said, imagining a world in which we center the needs of those who put the most heat out in the social space, but unfortunately receive the most hate. We're speaking directly to these communities, right? And these are shared experiences. This is not observations from outside of the window. We are of the communities that we are seeking to center in this space. Two, and three, we've got global vision here, right? This is so much larger. Black culture influences the world, right? And there's so much intersectionality in our experiences. And so from jump, we have acknowledged that intersectionality. We've acknowledged the diasporic reach of where we're trying to get to. And in having these conversations with creators, it's like, listen, we want to listen to y'all. One of the biggest lessons that I've enjoyed in this stage in launching Spill is that our communities oftentimes do not get access to beta tech products, right? So we don't even necessarily have that lived experience yet of what it means to have access to a VC funded, next best thing, social media platform that really has the potential to go out here and do exactly what it says it does. And so part of that has also been that engagement, and the creators that have flocked to us by the thousands, we are so grateful for, have done so organically, and have done so out of curiosity. And what has kept them here is a very personal relationship we have developed. I've been developing with my creator community with this. We believe that if we center these folks, we can have a world where everybody is healthier, right? And it's essentially, from a policy perspective, the same type of attempts we see in rhetoric around in a lot of other spaces. Center the people who are in the most needed, who have the most harms exposed, solve for those problems, and then it's a healthier ecosystem for everybody. Second thing I'll say with that folks have really been identifying is, it is a purely domestic narrative, right? That being of marginalized communities, right? If we look at the global majority, Black and Brown folks are the global majority. So when we're talking about connecting with folks, not just domestically, but across across the waters in other countries, we're also seeing a lot of resonance with creators who are in Africa, creators who are doing the dang thing out there, and they're saying, listen, we're the global majority. In 2030, America is going to be much browner. And we want to be able to link arms with people who understand and are ready to throw down on that cultural capital and really put on. And so that's what we're excited to do. We're building a coalition of creators and people who are like-minded, who really want to impact this space with us. And we're so grateful to do so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the conversation about, we historically don't have beta access to so many of these new opportunities. And I want to bring up something that I thought was interesting from Android users. A lot of folks talked about on X, it was Twitter at the time, hey, how come there is no Android app? I think why. Oh, no shade on Android, but why iPhone only first?
For every person that we welcome on the app, the same way that we started with the build for iPhone to kind of test and see how it was going to go and integrate and how it was going to work, is the same also reason why we have to use invite codes, right? And a lot of people think, oh, invite codes are for exclusivity and you guys are trying to build the hype. Like, actually, y'all, invite codes are to make sure that our servers can continue to run 24/7, right? Every single person who is on the platform, that costs money and time. And I know y'all see the headlines, and we did really well in pre-seed, and we're in another funding round right now. But we got to make sure that the lights stay on for everybody. We got to make sure that this app continues to go. And shout out to our phenomenal engineering team, because we have yet to have a major problem with the app, as we have welcomed hundreds of thousands of people in the past month. So we're really grateful for that. So that's important for our communities to know. This is not about exclusivity. This is about making sure that we are building for the future. We're here for the long haul, and we want to make sure that the tech supports that.
So Phonz, Elon takes over, you lose your job, and you say, you know what? I'm really about it. Like, this is my community. We are what makes this successful. I'm a part of the mindset that, I'm personally over asking for seats at the table. I believe we can build our own tables. And I understand there's an argument to be made. Like, we should be pressuring them to hire. I get that. It's just not my fight. Is like, we need to see that we can do this too on our own. What gave you that courage to say, you know what? I'm not going to just go look for another gig. I'm going to start this. I'm going to start my idea, put my offering into the world.
It was us. It was experiences such as going to Afrotech for the past several years and connecting with folks. My co-founder, Devaris, and I met each other about 4 years ago, same day. We started at Twitter the same day at the same time, and have been talking for years about these issues, these challenges. And I think many people in the Afrotech community, we all feel the same way. If you've worked at a major tech platform and you're Black and you're in the ERGs, and we're all looking at each other and we're like, man, we got to go do something. So I know that this is something that isn't particularly original in terms of a feeling, but I'll tell you two truths that happened to me the night that the layoffs happened. First was, I got incredibly clear. I was incredibly focused. It was just something that I can't really explain, but I was just determined. I knew it in my heart. It was just like, there's no going back. We're going to do this. If I got to, liquidate the 401k or do whatever it takes, we're going to do this. And that level of conviction, I think, really set the tone for everything that's happened since. But as I mentioned before, the conviction came from two experiences or sort of feelings at that time, which was, one, nobody knows this better than us. And two, you just have to have the audacity, the guts. That's literally the difference between us and most of those folks that we look up to. It's just being like, grab your Jones and get out there and do it. And it's amazing to see what has happened in the time since then. I mean, it's crazy to have this conversation that in less than a year, we've gone from I've gone from fired to funded to the number one social app in the App Store in less than 8 months. It's amazing.
100%. And I gotta ask you this also, Fonz. Like, the timing of notable social media apps has them dropping has created an even more challenging task to build a social media. It's going to be challenging regardless, but that just makes it even harder when very well funded and previously successful entrants get into the space. Um, what do you lean into when you're on the road to building something and a powerful rival sets their sights on that same territory?
Well, it's a couple of things. First, this has been happening since the beginning of this journey, right? There's been all kinds of, innovation, and I actually think it's fantastic. I think we haven't really seen a true innovation in social in about a decade. We've had a couple of, you know, new kind of, gimmicky things here or there, but there's, like truly a new wave of how do you think about social and community and, business models and all of that we haven't seen really since the last year or so, and so I think that's really exciting, and I don't look at that at all as a negative. I think it creates a lot of conversation and actually gets opens a lot of doors for a lot of people to be like, hey, did you hear about this? Oh, you're talking about that? Oh, okay, let's talk about this, and maybe check it out. And at the same time, it is so obviously clear. And again, you're on the platform, and as Kenya mentioned to everyone, we can't wait to welcome many more folks onto it in the coming months as we move through our beta process. But you'll see the minute you get on Spill, it's different. I mean, it's as different as walking around Times Square versus Brooklyn. Like you can just feel the difference automatically. It's different conversations, different content. The way the platform is designed, it's colorful. There's motion. Our brand is, the language, the lexicon, the name Spill obviously comes from the Black queer community, right? Like this is different. We haven't really seen something like this at this level, I think, in a while. So I'm really animated and grounded in our purpose and our mission, and know that the problems that we're looking to solve are fundamentally different than I think any other players in the space are looking to tackle.
And the differentiators are proven. The thesis is proven in the feedback that we get from our community in real time. Right, data is testing, so people are telling us how they're feeling every single time. We open up the app on a daily basis, and what warms my heart so much is we see people saying, "Hey, I just told my therapist about Spill." Right. I'm feeling better about being on social media. I didn't even notice y'all, but y'all have my phone battery dying on a daily basis. I have to carry around a portable charger around my house because I'm so much, right? Um, but it's because people are finding, not just finding community, but creating brand new communities around shared experiences amongst themselves. And so much about the product design lends itself to feeling like a healthier, happier, more vibrant ecosystem that they want to be a part of and continue to develop. We've got the who's who of culture on the platform, celebs and music legends, and you're getting to see conversations between people that you may not have even knew each other, and perhaps they didn't know each other before Spill, talking about what's more influential, album covers or album titles, right? And we're also seeing folks who have love for UX and UI design, who perhaps have never had the opportunity to work in a field like that, give their 2 cents and 3 cents about what they think about this as well, and again receive a call and response from our team too about thank you so much for that idea, and we appreciate that. And then the next build, they get to see their their idea updated and implemented. And so it's just such an awesome experience. Nothing like it exists on social media, and we know that those differentiating factors are what keep people coming back, but also what's going to have us continue to receive more success like this in the future.
And so this one is more of a startup building question and fundraising question. When you go to build a startup, how, because I asked Marlon Nichols this question, he was on the episode that's not dropped yet, but by the time this comes out, that will have dropped. And I asked him, how do you know as a founder how much to raise? And since you're in such a tumultuous vertical social media, how much of the thinking of we need a war chest, not just engineers, not just talent, etc. But we also need a war chest. How much of that goes into the calculation on this is the number we're going to raise?
Yeah, I can chime in here. I think first of all, shout out to Marlon, one of our lead funders in Spill, and shout out to the entire Mac Venture Capital team and Charles King and everyone over there. We really I had a learning curve in this cycle as well because this is my first venture-backed startup, and I was lucky enough to have a co-founder like Tavares who has been through these cycles a couple of times. And when we look at the fundraising, you're definitely going in there like, okay, what do I need right now? And I'm going to get to this. It always takes longer and it always costs way more than you think it's going to take. And sometimes that's really hard, especially for Black founders, where I think we raise 2% of overall venture capital in this country goes to Black founders. And then for Black women, it's even a fraction of that. So it's often hard for us to say, hey, yeah, we want to raise more as if we, can dictate the terms. The business has to justify it, of course. But I think ultimately, when you have, and this is a great message to the VC community and especially for all founders out there, you have to think not just to your point, what do I need now, but let's plan for success and really challenge venture capital to invest in Black founders, especially with the vision of success, right? This is, we need a couple of cycles maybe, and sometimes we don't always get that as Black founders. And even, Black owned funds or Black led funds sometimes have the same sort of, challenges and restrictions. And so it is a mind shift for us to really go in there, not thinking, okay, I can get to this bar, just eke it out, But no, actually, let's plan for success. Our vision is to create the first multi-billion-dollar valued social platform that's been Black owned and Black operated that we've ever seen before. What does that actually take? How do we work backwards from that vision and ensure that we have everything we need to give us the greatest chance to get there? And credit to Marlon and our backers who have been really, really fantastic in being like, you're going to need more and it's going to take more time. So plan for that.
Yeah, so when you go to investors who are very smart, very reputable, they're leaders in their category, Mac Venture Capital, K4 Capital, roughly a year and a half, 2 years ago, like what is it that you sell them on? Because the idea is one thing. What is it that you sell them on that says, I'm going to write them a check? What do you think you bring to that meeting that gets you that level of confidence?
As Kenya mentioned, not to be that, but we got to flex a little bit. There's nobody better in the social media marketing space in the world than me and the teams that I've been able to lead over the past, I'd say, 5 years. And that's not just my opinion. I won best overall social for my team at HBO, and then 2 years later for Twitter. We do this, and we do this well. So understanding and owning our space, right? It's really the founding team, right? Like we know what we're doing between Tavares and I. There's nothing that we haven't seen in the social space from a build side or from a community and content side. So that's number one, and I think that's what resonated. I think number two, we are tackling a really challenging problem that's really pervasive and really, really easy to understand. Hate online has been a problem for a long time, right? Hate towards Black communities and especially, creators not getting compensated, all of that. It's been a problem for a long time. A lot of people have, taken attempts to solve this problem. And so I think that's meaningful too. Sometimes it's a little scary to be like, we're going to tackle this monster, but that actually gets, funds excited because it's like, if they can solve this, that's your moat, right? Like they've come through and, as we're cracking our large language model technology, and we were focused on this before ChatGPT blew up and everything else, this is something that really is a game changer. It's, no BS. And so that was the second thing that I think got people excited. And then I'd say, yeah, the third thing is just passion, right? Like this wasn't a side project. This wasn't something that I was, oh, let's see what happens. It's like, no, I'm betting my life on it. And people can feel that. And whatever comes, I'm going to be in this, and the team, Kenya and Tavares and Shout out to everybody on Team Spill who's been grinding literally 7 days a week for the past 8 months, like no breaks. Not that we're trying to build that as the company culture, but it's just from passion, right? I think that goes a long way. People can feel that in the room.
When you see founders who are who you were 2 years ago, knowing what you know now, what would you say to the Phonz 2 years ago?
Couple things I would say. First, you are more right than you even know. You are more right than you even know. And if you're feeling it in your gut, trust that there is many, many other people who are probably feeling the same way. So that's number one. I'd say number two, there's a wave happening. There's a wave of Black entrepreneurship that is exciting and beautiful. And I know we're in the 50th anniversary of hip hop mode right now. So it actually reminds me of, hip hop labels in the 80s and 90s, what Russell and Puff and Jay and Dame and all those folks did, where it was like, let's go from being, not just the performers, right? Not just the products ourselves, but we actually make it, right? We actually platform it. And that this wave is happening. I met so many other incredible, founders during this journey already and want to work with everyone. And shout out again to the Afrotech community, because you guys have really built, an amazing platform for Black folks in tech to come together. And that wave is happening. And this is just the latest, the next big, shift in that. So I would say you're not alone, because there's a whole bunch of other folks coming along this journey too, and we got to talk to each other. We got to share information. We got to, connect and put each other on game and put each other on real spill, so that we can all benefit from this journey. Because that's how we win. We win collectively. And so I would say those are the two big things. One, trust your gut. You are more right than you know. And number two, there's a wave happening, and jump on. Let's go. If you're thinking about it, go do it. Come holler at us, pop on Spill. We're going to help amplify you and elevate you.
Thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Will.